Hotel staff of Reddit, what's the most bleep moment you witnessed at your hotel? Story 1. I worked at a hotel in a resort town in Europe. One of the maids called me to a room for help because it has been the location of an extremely messy O from the touring ice show. The room was covered in bodily secretions and excreta, there were used condoms thrown everywhere, and half the furniture was busted. The poor maid was in tears, thinking she'd have to clean it. The hotel management called in a professional cleaning company who wore disposable suits, respirators, and eye protection. They got rid of most of the stuff in the room, and charged a fortune to the ice show. Story 2. I worked front desk at a luxury hotel. One night the elevator doors opened and a completely naked woman stumbled out, covered in blood. It turned out that she was epileptic, had a seizure in the shower, fell, cut herself, exited her room, and locked herself out. It was a truly terrifying 25 minutes of trying to piece together what had happened. Story 3. I work overnights in a relatively small hotel, and at least 6/7 days a week, I hear people F loud as hell in their rooms. Half the rooms have a balcony that overlooks the lobby, and those doors aren't soundproof at all. We had a man sleepwalk out of his room to the lobby, buck-ass nude. We had a woman show up in the lobby in her underwear. Her BF choked her out and stole her wallet with the room keys. And before I started here, there was a massive wedding that took place, and later that night, the groom killed his bride and himself in their room. Story 4. I was a night shift security guard for a motel right next to the biggest casino in my state. It was common for drug addicts to hang out around the property. One time this guy staying in a room did a little too much meth and had a freak out. He was running around the walkways naked. I had to ward him away from people's rooms so they wouldn't be disturbed. He ended up jumping off the second-story balcony and splatting on the pavement. He scampered up and hauled ass across the street into a car dealership. Not my problem anymore. Story 5. Many years ago worked at a very nice casino resort as a valet. Regular pulled up in his nice BMW and went to help. Wrote up his ticket, got his keys, and offered to help load up his luggage on a bell cart while we waited for a bellman. Opened the trunk and went to lift the suitcase, and I about threw my back out. I wasn't prepared for it to be so heavy. Gave it another go and heaved it onto the bell cart and heard a sound. Mr. XXX, did your suitcase just make an oof sound? Long story short, a prostitute who was banned from the property was stowed away in there to get up to his room. Story 6. Had an underage girl naked from the waist down speed walking around the hotel and casino looking for her mom. She was absolutely hammered and in full blackout. Me and another supervisor caught up to her just as she was getting into an elevator full of drunk dudes telling her they would help her find her mom. Her mom was not at the casino, and we never determined where she actually came from. Just appeared there, moving like a speed walker, naked except for a tank top. Story 7. I'm working night shift as a receptionist, and had my fair share of questionable encounters. One night a guy comes from outside and asks if he could use our restroom. It's located one floor down, and every time we let someone in at night we kind of scan the person before letting them in, and I didn't get any crazy vibes from this dude. After about 20 to 25 minutes I got the feeling maybe everything wasn't okay and went downstairs. When approaching the bathrooms I could hear him inside the handicapped toilet, and the door was open a bit. He was on his knees with his pants down, doing his thing and sucking on the door handle while watching pee on his phone. I yelled at him and asked what the hell he is doing but could get in contact with him, so I grabbed a towel and threw it over his face to break line of sight. I told him to leave immediately or I would call the police. I went upstairs and after a few minutes he left the building. That one sticks out for me. Story 8. I was a night auditor at a Home 2 Suites several years back. Our usual extended stay clientele were traveling nurses, government contractors, or out-of-town veterans getting something done at the VA hospital. But we had one guy and girl on the first floor for a few weeks that were odd. It took us a bit to realize it was a hooker and her pimp. Some John would come to see her, and the guy who rented the room would come out to hang in the lobby or go smoke at our fire pit. Our manager was a bit clueless and took longer to figure it out, but once she did, she went and knocked on the door to ask them to leave. He only cracked the door so she couldn't see inside the room. He declined housekeeping for 2 straight weeks. But she managed to see an office chair behind him that had 2 handguns and a huge Rambo knife on it, so she called the cops. I came up later that day to pick up my check to find cops had surrounded the building. Turns out he barricaded himself in the room and held the prostitute hostage, so SWAT had to come tear gas him through the window and use a battering ram to get inside. The owners fired our manager for that, for letting the work go on so long and the optics of cops swarming our hotel. Story 9. I worked at the front desk of a large convention hotel, one of the big hotel brands. The lobby bar was right across the lobby from the front desk. One night as I was working the desk checking someone into their room, these 2 drunk guys in the bar got into a fight. They were really going at it, beating the shit out of each other, and they spilled out into the lobby. Then one guy picks up a bar stool, and just like in the movies, he crashed it down over the other guy's head. But unlike in the movies, the bar stool didn't splinter into pieces. It was solid wood, and he bashed the other guy hard. Other guy went down like a sack of potatoes, out cold, bleeding all over the place from a large head wound. I got to sit and watch as the cops and paramedics came, arrested them both and patched up the one guy's busted head. Meanwhile, I still had guests checking in, wondering what kind of hotel they had booked. Story 10. Worked at Hyatt in Toronto. Management sent me up to a room they knew contained a pimp. Big fur coat, grills, giant chains, and of course his employees. They did not warn me of this beforehand. If they did, I wouldn't have gone alone. His employees were both topless and apparently celebrating a birthday and tried very hard to get me to join. I just needed them to not get another noise complaint because I did not want to have to evict them. Story 11. When I was young and worked at a hotel, I was delivering a room service meal, and when I got there, the door was closed but had been left just shy of being latched. I knocked and then the guest yelled, "Come in." I pushed it open with the cart, walked in, and he was standing there with a big grin on his face watching my reaction as I wheeled in the cart, but naked, with a woman, also naked, on her knees vigorously blowing him. She never stopped, or even did a sideways glance in my direction. He smiled and reached out and handed me a $20 he had in his hand and said to just leave it there and close the door on the way out. I guess part of their kink was to show off and see my reaction. I was shocked, but never said anything to anyone at work. Story 12. I used to work as a bartender for the Four Seasons in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Here's my story. Late night, 1:30ish a.m., and we are getting ready to close the bar. A very attractive woman, aged about 30, approaches. My buddy and I tell her that we are about to close up, but can offer her a drink if she wants. She seems drunk already, and pauses for a moment, before whipping out a $20 bill and handing it to me. She asks for a Negroni. I say sure, and begin to make it. As I am putting the ice into the mixer, I see my buddy give me a funny look, a shocked sort of look. I ask him what's up, and he side-eyes towards the woman. Lo and behold, I turn around and there she is, tits out, rubbing her in. I ask her kindly to leave, and tell her I cannot serve her. She walks away, but not before discarding of her sports bra and calling me a SP*CK. Story 13. A guest was walking the halls with a machete. He proceeds to go into his room. A few minutes later, the guest next door can be seen pounding on his door. The previous night he had assaulted the woman he was staying there with. I'm assuming they thought he was abusing her again. The neighbors started to head back to their room, when the guest throws the woman out of the room, with her arm barely attached, spraying blood all over the walls and floor. He doesn't notice the door shut behind him, and he takes off running. He was caught very quickly in a parking lot next door. That room was something I'll never forget. Blood and flesh on the bed and floor. Boss said to tell housekeeping to clean it up. I quit a few days later. Story 14. Worked on a show in a Las Vegas casino. During the AVN's Adult Movie Awards show, a top actress came to our show with her boyfriend. Show was held because she started lifting her shirt to show the audience her breasts. Then she went down on the boyfriend. As security finally arrived, they were having full-on S while sitting in the audience. He went to get drinks, ditching her. She bit a security guard in the arm so hard that she hit bone. Eventually she was carried out and arrested. I'm sure the boyfriend was as well. Their awards show was the next day, but she missed it to being in jail. This was a Cirque du Soleil show, definitely not the place for this behavior. Story 15. One night while I was working audit, I had some guests ask if there was any way to use the pool after hours. As our pool closed at 11 and they were checking in fairly close to midnight. I begrudgingly agreed as I had homework to do and I thought I'd be nice. So I agreed and let them in. My mistake was not turning on the lights, which I left off to not make other guests who might happen upon it think it was open. So I let them in and proceed to do my work and ignored them. After a while I decided to check the cameras to see if they were still in there or if they had returned to their room. Upon looking at the cameras I see them just going at it. At first I didn't believe what I saw, but they were going to Pound Town. I wasn't sure what to do. I didn't want to be that guy to ruin their good time. But I still had my job to worry about. Since the lights were off and it was late, I just let things finish up. I did get a nice tip from them as thanks for letting them use the pool after hours. That was the first and last time I let people in the pool area after hours. It was an interesting night for sure. Story 16. I used to work third shift at a hotel while going to university. One weekend every summer our city hosted a tournament for the National Softball Association for the Deaf. One night I got multiple noise complaints and went upstairs. In one of the rooms, a man and woman were having the loudest, most bestial you could possibly imagine. You could hear it from 30 down the hall. They weren't answering the phone and obviously couldn't hear me knocking. I used a master key to crack open the door and was even more amazed at the pure volume and completely atonal and unabashed moans, grunts, and yowls. Being careful not to stick my head in, I reached inside the room and flipped the lights on and off, then pretty much ran away. It's a shame people complained because I hated to interrupt what must have been a good time. Story 17. I work housekeeping in a shady hotel in my local area. I say shady cause it's a nicer hotel, but it's in a bad part of town, and it attracts a lot of crazies. There was a man that used to tip the housekeepers in weed to clean his room. A large amount of weed to the housekeepers in an illegal state, and always wondered why. I finally got my turn to clean his room and figured it out. There were toys everywhere. Everywhere. They were suction cupped to the headboards, shower, and toilet seat. There was loose glitter all over every inch of the room as well as the balcony and fireplace. Used condoms lined up like they were being counted before thrown out on the table and seat at the end of the bed. He was always in the room while you cleaned, profusely apologized, asked you not to say anything and would hand you an ounce just to throw out the trash, vacuum, and replace the towels and sheets. It was good weed. So I understood why the other housekeepers never ratted him out.